Welcome everyone to the next part of our plant series. Today we're going to talk about the parts of a seed. That's right, the parts of a seed. Most of you may know this already, but seeds have three main parts. There's the seed coat. Now that's the outer shell around the outside of the seed, and this is there primarily for protection to keep it from being injured by the elements outside and from drying out as well. Then we have the embryo, and the most of the seed is made up of this, which is called the endosperm. Okay, now the endosperm is actually the food that the seed needs, the plant needs, when it begins to grow. Because initially, it's not going to be able to change any of that sunlight into food or sugars. So the embryo is the baby, or what grows up into to be the plant, and of course the seed coat, that's the wrapping around it. It's like a jacket in the wintertime. Okay, keeps them safe. Okay, so here we see that I'm drawing a typical seed. This is a bean seed really, so it's not a representation of every seed that's out there, but it has all of the same sort of main parts. Okay, the brown on the outside, this is the seed coat, and this has to crack open in some way, shape, or form in order for the seed to emerge. Or no, sorry, not the seed, but the embryo. This is the embryo that I'm drawing here in green. Okay, now this is the part which you mentioned is like the baby of the plant. This is what grows up into the adult plant. And all of this yellow, this is the embryo. This is the nutrient or the material that the plant feeds on, the embryo feeds on, as it begins to grow before it establishes roots and reaches above the soil enough so that it can begin to photosynthesize and turn the sun's energy into sugars. Before it can begin to produce its own energy, it has to have a source of energy, and that's what this embryo is. As you can see, I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but we're just going to label things up here just now that's the seed coat on the outside, the embryo, no, sorry, the endosperm here in yellow, which is the food, and of course the embryo, which is the growing point of the seed and becomes a new plant. As you can see, I'm not a great artist, but I do okay. Feel a bit like Jack and the Beanstalk here with the magic beans. Okay, so let's look at the vocabulary that we're going to be using um, for this topic. There's a lot more vocabulary. There's but we're looking at what is appropriate for us at our level in our school. Um, and if you're interested in learning more, I can certainly share more with you. Just let me know. Okay, so we've got the seed coat, we've got the embryo, which we've mentioned already. We've got the endosperm, again, the food. Next on our list is the term germination. Okay, this is the process in which the seed bursts out of the seed coat, the embryo, sorry, bursts out of the seed coat and rises up and grows into a new plant. It's also the verb of this is germinate, okay, for the plant to germinate. Then we have the term nutrients. And this is all the food that the plant requires to begin growing, and this is stored in the endosperm. Okay? The plant also requires nutrients when it grows, but that's a different part of the process. Then we have the requirements for germination. These tend to be when there's a change in temperature or a change in moisture. That's how the plant knows, or the seed knows, that it's okay to germinate. And it goes from being dormant or asleep, and it begins to germinate. Okay? That's change in temperature. It warms up, and it gets a bit wetter, sorry. Okay? Then we have sprouting or sprouts, and that again that's when the embryo emerges from the seed and rises up over the surface. And then it develops into a seedling. Okay, now these last two terms, the cotyledons, say that with me, cotyledon. Okay, and then there are two terms that are associated with this. This is the monocot and dicot. Mono meaning one and di meaning two. Now we're going to come back to that in a little bit. Just remember the cotyledons are leaves that are part of the embryo, and there's the monocot singular, dicot plural, do more than one. Okay, two. All right, so here we are. We've got a bit of soil, and we're going to begin the process of showing you how a seed germinates. We've got the seed coat, the embryo, and the endosperm. Okay, now the seed coat breaks. The embryo begins to emerge out of the seed, okay, feeding on the endosperm. And it also begins to push a root, or what's called a radicle, down into the ground. It's amazing. It's a brilliant process how the plant knows which way to grow, but that's a different thing. Okay, so here we have our seedling beginning to form. The embryo is growing up above the surface. It's feeding on the endosperm, and the roots are growing longer and developing into the soil, holding it in place. And now we see the embryo is growing into or sprouting into a seedling. Okay, where it's forming leaves, and at the same time it's using up the nutrients that are in the endosperm, and the roots are growing deeper and spreading, and in this case this is a tap root. It has fibrous roots that come off of it, but its primary root is a tap. Okay. And now our seedling is grown into a plant with leaves branching off as we go along. And because by the time it reaches sort of the last stage, the plant has begun to photosynthesize and produce its own food. So it no longer requires the energy that was stored in the endosperm, and it's able to tap into nutrients in the soil as well through its root system, and so it becomes independent, and it produces its own food. So there's a basic process of germination from a seed to a seedling and growing into a plant. So here we go. Let's clear that away and have a look at the next thing.